Hi, my name is Jess Roshkovan, and for our very last book talk in our literacy class, I decided to read the book called Book Love by Penny Kittle. This was probably one of the most interesting books that I read during my time in the GSC because it really resonated with me. While my background is in biology education, everything that Penny outlined in this book just made a lot of sense, and I think it is the way that we should handle literacy in schools. Penny Kittle, she's an English teacher, and that teaches primarily seniors in high school. And in this book, she basically outlines the way she thinks that literacy should be taught in school. And one of her biggest ideas and what she's a big proponent of is having students become independent readers. So not just giving students and following a curriculum and giving them 6 texts to read over a year. She believes that students need to be able to read dozens and dozens and dozens of texts in a year by themselves. Now, she says not all those texts have to be included in class discussions, but if kids start learning how to read numerous of texts, they will become readers and they will start getting that love for reading. And she brings up a couple of interesting points in this book that I'm going to pick and choose what I want to discuss today. But one of the things that she writes in her book, and I'll read a quote, is we have to commit to helping students choose texts that they can navigate alone, then teach the skills needed to unravel more difficult texts in class so that their skills increase while they experience the pleasure of reading. When skills and pleasure align, students begin to choose more difficult texts to read independently. So she believes instead of giving students, who are seniors, to read The Grapes of Wrath, she thinks you need to start somewhere more on their own level. So if you're teaching 12th grade English, you need to be aware that not everyone in that class is on a 12th grade reading level. So she believes that when you start students with books that are more easier for them to read and something that they're interested in, they're going to get hooked on reading. And once they get hooked on reading, at that point, you can start increasing the complexity, and then over time, students will really become independent readers. And I think that's really interesting because when I was in school, that's not how it was. My high school teachers definitely were not into they didn't push independent reading on us. They gave us 6 books to read probably in a year. We read a Shakespeare play, we read Catcher in the Rye, we read nonfiction text, and that's about it. So, and it was all right, here's a book, here's a class discussion, let's write some papers on it, all right, let's do another book. So there was no emphasis on the idea of reading for pleasure. I think Penny Kittle believes that once students start reading for pleasure, they're going to become better readers. And I think that idea is fantastic. And she also says that, we must expect an increased complexity of text over time. So we want students to be climbers, but for them to climb, you can't give them a text that they can't handle, because the second that they get a text that is way too complicated for them, they're going to lose interest completely. And I think that's a very interesting point. And she brings up that fact because she says if students are not challenged, but if students are given a text that they really can't handle, they're going to just not read it. So you want to start students off with texts that they can read so they can enjoy reading. In her book, she also talks about other topics that include opening the doors to reading. So how to get students motivated to read in the first place. And one of the most interesting things that she said was giving them a variety of books to read. And she brought up graphic novels, and I think that's an interesting example because when I was in school, graphic novels were not even a thing that we looked at in English class. But she believes that, and I'm going to read a quote from the book, she believes that graphic novels are very inviting. Although they're complex and often have vocabulary that boosts the reading level higher than we expect, the art allows students, especially those who struggle, to create a mental picture as they read, to follow the meaning more easily. And I think it's important to give students the opportunity to figure out what kind of books they like. And I think graphic novels are a really cool way of doing that. Another thing that she mentions is the idea of balance. So even if we are giving students more books that are more in their level, it is good to balance it out. So yes, have students, read graphic novels that they can enjoy, but also have challenge the students. And if they're ready, make them read books like Catcher in the Rye, The Great Gatsby, Grapes of Wrath, books like that. Another thing that she brings up, and since I am not an English teacher, I really have never really thought about, is the idea of a classroom library. And she talks about how classroom libraries, first of all, are really hard to organize because you need a lot of money and time, and you need people that are willing to either donate books or donate money. But she also brings up the idea that maintaining a classroom library is really hard, and she still hasn't figured out really a good way of managing that, because students steal, and while she does like the fact that they are reading and, you know, are engaged in the book, she also knows that some of them just like will forget their books in their bedrooms and will just never return them. But I thought that was a pretty cool point to bring up, because I never think of that, because not my area of expertise. But yeah, she also brings up another interesting ideas about conferences, and she thinks that conferences are really important for numerous reasons. One of them is to teach students literacy strategies, and we talked about that in class this semester, teaching students literacy and strategies. And the way she does that is by having like a quick 5-minute conference and just asking students what strategies they're using, and making sure that students are aware of the strategies that they're using when they're reading. Another type of conference that she talked about is just sort of going to the student, just asking them like how they're doing the reading, and then listening to them, see what they have to say, and then from that move forward and help them out if they have any questions. And she said that while she thinks conferences are fantastic, she knows a lot of teachers, especially at the high school level, don't really engage in that practice. Yeah. Finally, I think one of the most interesting part about this book is just the stories that she wrote about her students. So there's a couple between the chapters. There were a couple of stories about different students that she had over the last couple of years, and there was one that stuck to me the most. It was this girl who was in one of those general English classes, and a lot of times she refused to do work because she was frustrated. But when Penny had her as a student, when she found a book that really connected with her, she became an avid reader again. And with that, she connected to writing, and writing about her own experiences, which helped her out in her personal life. And I think what this book points out is that in order to get students to read, we just need to give them the opportunity to find books that speak to them. So if it's not Shakespeare, if it's, you know, not Grapes of Wrath, if it's not Catcher in the Rye, that's okay, because when they're going to find a book that connects to them, they're going to get that passion for reading. And then once they get that passion for reading, then we can challenge students to take the next step and read more complex texts with maybe more deeper meanings. But yeah, I think this book was fantastic. Talks about different things, about independent reading, about how to calculate stamina, reading stamina for students, and just how to evoke that passion in students for reading, especially at a high school level. So I would highly recommend this book, even if you're not an English teacher. I think it opened my eyes a bit to literacy. So yeah, Book Club by Penny Kittle.